Over the last 30 years, we have consistently and systematically seen the ANC support sort of collapse. Now, I say sort of collapse because, well, when you actually count the offshoots of the ANC, so the EFF and the MK, and you put that together, it's still kind of the same amount of support. However, what has happened over the last few years, and really only the last 18 years or so, has been the turnout of voters has absolutely collapsed in South Africa. Every single year, with every single election, especially noticeable in local government elections, we have seen a almost collapse in voter turnout, with most voters now just sort of apathetically looking at the entire process and going, well, what even is the point of voting on this? And this is where polling in South Africa is actually incredibly well done. Now, of course, we don't actually know the methodology of these pollsters, and there's a reason why most of them won't reveal their methodology, because obviously it's how they get paid, and no one wants to tell everyone else how they should be doing their polling, because then, well, no one would pay them. So a lot of the polling data and a lot of the sort of mechanics behind these pollings have always remained a mystery, but we know that at least in South Africa, specifically when it comes from people like Franz Cronje and the Institute of Race Relations, and now the Common Sense new institute that Franz Cronje has launched, we kind of know just how accurate they are. And according to Franz Cronje himself, the reason they're so accurate is because they've never changed their methodology. South Africa changes, but they continue to focus on what works, what gives them the actual numbers, rather than try to play to the strengths of one political party over another, which is something that I have thought in the past, especially when you see a lot of these polls coming out of the US with CNN polls and MSNBC polls and YouGov polls, and you just sort of go, wait, but all of these are very left-wing organizations, which tells you that they clearly have a bias. And so even if they're not necessarily aware of it, those biases are going to play itself out in how you put together these surveys. Franz Cronje and the people who have worked with him has always been very good at keeping their biases at bay and just delivering the facts. And the facts, as they stand right now, is that the ANC's support is collapsing. Now, we should just very quickly make it clear. This is a very small poll, with only about 1,002 registered voters asked whether or not, how they would vote and how they view the different political parties. They do also say here that there is a 4% margin of error, which is rather large, and therefore this poll cannot be taken as gospel because, well, 4% can often be the difference between actually getting a seat in parliament and not getting anything, or winning an election and getting second. Right, so 4% is a huge margin of error. Also, 1,000 is not insignificant, and definitely you can make a statistical, or you can make a number of analytical sort of approaches from a statistically relevant perspective. But you would want to see more if you're really going to try and make predictions of what the next election could look like. So I just wanted to sort of get all of that out of the way before we talk about this. So in this survey, where they asked 1,002 registered voters, so these aren't all voter or all people of voting age, which actually makes it a little bit more credible, we have the following, right? They used a turnout model of 53%. That means 53% of registered voters actually show up to vote. This is something that I just want to quickly say. I have a feeling that the next election, not the local elections, because most people have sort of given up on local elections. I have a feeling that the next national election might be one of the biggest we've ever had. For years now, and this is at least my opinion on it, there has been a collapse in voter turnout or even just in voter registrations, as most people look at the country and go, what's the point? The ANC is going to win. They're going to continue to govern incredibly badly. Why would I even waste my time standing in a line to vote for something that isn't going to happen? With the new government of national unity, with the ANC for the first time ever falling under 50%, and not just falling under 50%, but falling dramatically under 50%, this might be where a lot of these apathetical voters finally turn back on and say, hey, maybe there is a chance for us to change things here. Maybe there is a way for us to claw back the country from the brink of collapse. So I actually think there's going to be a massive turnout. That's my prediction, at least for 2029. But all right, so predicting 53% turnout. We have the ANC now sitting at 37%. if the vote was today. They would get 37%. The DA would get 32%. Now remember, the margin of error swings 4%. So it is very possible that the ANC sits at 33% and the DA sits at 36%, or both of them sit around 33, 34%. The fact that they are so close within that margin of error suggests that they might just be neck and neck. The other parties, however, is really where the story takes off. You see, not a single one of the other parties was able to even score at the 10% mark. Now, this is where that 4% really becomes handy. See, the smaller a party is and the less support a party has, the more that error starts to play in, right? So you have a party like the MK that is now currently sitting at about 8%. But it could very easily be that because of the massive margin of error, that margin of error could be even larger. Now, normally that would only start to happen at about 5% or even lower than that. So when you get to these parties that have 2 or 3%, that's why you'll go through this entire sort of article and they don't even mention the parties that go under 5%, because that's usually where you get to dangerous territory. A party that scores 2% in a poll that has a 4% error margin, that's just, it's statistically insignificant. So it doesn't really matter. But here you go, right? So you have the MK, only 8%. Economic Freedom Fighters, 7%. Inkatha Freedom Party, 6%. And then everyone else sort of scoring below that. They then went on and they actually asked people, what do you feel? What is your perception about the different political parties, and very specifically their policies, their leadership, and their ethics in the country's major political parties? And here you have a very interesting thing that starts to emerge. 30% of respondents said the DA had the best policies, with only 22% choosing the ANC. Now, you might be asking yourself, wait, how is it possible that the ANC still gets 37% of the vote when the majority, or at least not the majority, but more than any other party, believes that the DA has the better policies? And to that, I would say, we have entered the era of coalition governments. The people might still want to vote for the ANC just because they're not yet ready to hand the reins wholly to the DA. They might not trust the DA. They might think to themselves, hey, if the DA gets full power, they'll just do what the ANC has done, but for the white people, or whatever the case might be. Never mind the fact that the DA has never actually stood for, an ethnically pure South Africa or anything like that. But that might be the thing that keeps, or that people keep in their minds. So, 22% say the ANC is what they like. 28% say the DA provides good leadership, with only 17% saying the same of the ANC. 73% linked the ANC with the phrase broken promises, and 63% said it only cares about itself. The DA drew just 3% and 10% on those same measures. The poll also tested the public's perceptions of individual political leaders, and here's where things get really interesting. I'm not going to go through all of them because, well, most of us don't care. But Cyril Ramaphosa remains the most popular president in South Africa, with 38% of respondents viewing him as a positive force, at least within the ANC. From there, it drops significantly, right? So you have, for example, 10% for Paul Mashatile, 18% viewed Fikile Mbulula as maybe favorable, but effectively just really bad. 26% thought that John Steenhuisen might be a good leader, but 29% thought actually Helen Zille would make a far better leader. And then you have Jacob Zuma sitting at about 21%. But a very interesting thing here is, when asked who should be the next president for the ANC, a sizable amount of voters said, well, if it's not Cyril Ramaphosa for a third term, then they would like to see Patrice Motsepe as the next leader of the ANC. Now, I have my own opinions on Patrice. I think Patrice would be a terrible president. I think it would be just more of the same of Cyril Ramaphosa, because he, like Cyril Ramaphosa, is a man that likes union. He likes to keep the peace. And so he's constantly going to want to find a way to work with all of the other people within the ANC in order to keep the ANC together. And that I think is a really bad thing, especially at a time where our country needs decisive leadership. We need a president that can say, hey, this is where we're going. And I don't care if you guys don't like it. This is where we're going. It's another reason why I'm not a huge fan of John Steenhuisen, because he just comes across to me as a man that doesn't have the principles to say, this is where we're going to take South Africa, and I don't care what anyone else has to say. Because, well, at the end of the day, we have a country that is broken. We have a country that has no service delivery, no infrastructure development. Our economic growth is in the toilet. everything is going wrong. And the last thing we need right now is another guy that just wants to build bridges and sort of get together and sing Kumbaya around the fireplace. I think the ANC's collapse has always been on the cards. It was always going to happen. This is now the third poll we have seen in as many months, showing that the ANC is dropping even further in support within the country. Because as people are now sort of waking up and people are starting to see what the DA is doing, they're starting to see what the ANC is doing, they're starting to get a picture of what governance could potentially look like. Now, I'm not throwing any of my support behind the DA or the ANC or anyone else. I don't support political parties on this channel. I have my own parties that I vote for, but you will never know who they are because it has nothing to do with you. My job is to hold our political parties to account. So if you get angry, like yesterday with my video about John Steenhuisen, there were a couple of people like, this is unfair, how dare you criticize the DA in this way? My job is to hold our politicians to account. They are supposed to be servants of the people. That does not mean that I clean their knobs and make them shine. That means I call them out when they make mistakes. That's how it should be. The fact or the way we got into this mess in the first place, where everyone kept telling the ANC that their farts don't stink, and everyone would hold their noses right up to the rectum and go, smells like roses. That's how we ended here. I'm not going there, right? I will criticize every single political party and every single political leader when they make mistakes. I will hold them accountable because I think that is what my job is supposed to be. And then you guys can make up your minds as to who you want to vote for. I don't favor anyone, at least not on this channel. Maybe that'll change. Maybe one day there will be a conservative government that I can actually support and I can actually get behind. But for now, there isn't. And so I'm just doing my job, right? That's how it is. But anyways, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. Hit the like if you liked, the dislike if you didn't. And if you like what I do, I would ask that you share this video with as many people as possible because it really does help. Massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons as well as the YouTube channel members for continuing to support this channel. To become a patron, link in the description down below or join button right below this video. I was asked, and I'll just keep mentioning it for a couple of videos, I was asked to not put the names on the screen by a couple of you because you guys work for companies that you might get into trouble if your name is actually shown on screen. So if that is something that you guys don't mind, I won't put the names on there. If you guys say, hey, I want people to know that that I'm supporting you, that's fine. You can let me know if you want your name removed, and I will continue to try and remember to do so. Remember, I'm just one guy doing it, so I might forget at times. As always, I'll see all of you in the next one. Peace.